Thank you for the introduction and for the invitation to come and give a talk on medicines optimization through precision. So I'm just going to start off with this slide, which is from the report from the Royal Pharmaceutical Society about exactly what medicines optimization is. I quite like the way that this was handled in this particular report about getting the right patients, getting the right choice of medicine at the right time. And obviously there's huge patient engagement going on, and the talk earlier from Mr. Roberts was very important in terms of having patient engagement there. So what I tend to do is to look at technologies and how we can improve medicines optimization, develop the evidence base, and my thesis is that technologies and innovations will actually increase patient engagement rather than reduce it, because patients will become much more involved in the partnership between the prescribers, the dispensers, and the patient who's actually taking the drug. And so this is very important in terms of what we do, and I'll show you 3 case studies. These are not all in practice at the moment, but it gives you a future look as to where things are heading. And I'm going to focus on work that we're doing rather than what other people are doing, but clearly there's a lot more going on in the UK in the precision medicine environment. The UK is one of the best places to be able to undertake precision medicine or stratified medicine, and there's lots of things which are going on throughout this area in the UK. And our meeting on Thursday in London, where 250 people are attending, will go through some of the advances which are occurring at the moment in that area. So at the moment, what we do in the NHS, but not only the NHS, in any healthcare system throughout the world, is that we treat on the basis of one drug fits all, and we hope that that's going to have an efficacious response, i.e. the patient's going to get better, but we know that in 1/3 of the cases, patients get better, 1/3 they get moderately better, and 1/3 they don't, it doesn't get better at all. And we also use the strategy one dose fits all, no matter how big you are, how small you are, what gender you are. And that causes problems with safety as well, because the one dose fits all issue leads to sometimes very high levels of drugs in the bloodstream, leading to problems with adverse drug reactions. And I'm going to start off by telling you about a case history of somebody I saw in my clinic not long ago. He was a 70-year-old man. He attended my clinic for hypertension. He was on 7 antihypertensives. And then he said he was in total of 17 drugs, very much like you actually said, about 16 drugs or something in the morning. And he told me he was fully adherent. He took all of these medicines exactly as he was asked to do. But I tend to question a bit more, and then I did his pulse rate. He was on a beta blocker. His heart rate was 92 per minute. Well, I said, that doesn't quite fit. So I said, are you really taking all your drugs as you're supposed to? Yes, yes. I've got a dosage box. My pharmacist has given it to me, and I know exactly what to take, when to take it. However, I wasn't satisfied, so I took some urine from him, and I measured all the drugs in his urine using mass spectrometry. And the only thing I could find in his urine was caffeine. He liked a cup of coffee. None of the 17 drugs were there. He had assured me he was taking them. And as Alistair Kent would say, that what he was doing was that the drugs were going from his bathroom cabinet, not hitting any of the human cells that he had in his body, and were going straight into the porcelain. He was from a posh part of Liverpool, by the way. So that's an issue we have. And so what we did was to tell him about this, and we reduced it to 1 drug, and he's much better, just on 1 drug for his blood pressure. He's taking it. But 17 drugs, how can anybody actually take 17 drugs? It's quite difficult. And as a medic, I know that I haven't finished my antibiotic courses and so on, so I can fully understand how difficult it can be to take 17 drugs. So what I want to tell you is about 3 areas, as I said, we're working on. One is Warfarin, used by 1% of the patients in this country. 1 million patients, 1 to 1.5%, 1 million patients in this country are on Warfarin. People require different doses. Some require 0.5 milligram a day, some require 20 milligrams a day. And what we need to identify is what the dose is at the beginning, so that we can actually make sure they get the right dose at the right time to prevent any kinds of major complications, particularly bleeding events associated with warfarin. And so we've been doing some work on this for many years, and this involves a huge effort, involves recruiting large numbers of patients throughout the country, and then undertaking a lot of work on them to develop the evidence base of how we can actually improve dosing for warfarin. So this slide has 1 billion data points on it, okay, on 714 patients and 1 billion data points on it. And from this, it doesn't matter what the genes are. We identified 2 genes which are important in determining what the dose is for warfarin. But there are also other factors as well, such as age, height, weight, what other medications you are on, which also determine what dose of warfarin you need to take. So we took the genetics here, and we took the clinical factors, and we put them together in an algorithm. So we developed an algorithm, and then what we did was to undertake a randomized controlled trial. Now, you can have innovation, and there's lots of people who have innovations, but sometimes evidence base is lacking for those innovations. I think it's very important that we have an evidence base to show that innovations work in the NHS. So we did this randomized controlled trial, and we published this in the New England Journal of Medicine. And what we were able to show with this randomized controlled trial is those individuals who had, sorry, there's no pointer here, those individuals who were in the genotype guided group had better control of the warfarin compared to what we do at the moment. At the moment, we dose patients on the basis of getting 10 milligrams on day 1, 5 milligrams on day 2, and 5 milligrams on day 3. But those people who had genotype guided dosing were better controlled according to our randomized controlled trial. So the next issue for us is, what do we do? And so what we've been doing is working with the Innovation Agency, with the clerk, and with a company called LGC, and developing a point-of-care platform. And what this point-of-care platform does is basically you take a mouth swab, you put this mouth swab, which has a DNA in it, into this device here, which has got 4 wells, and within 45 minutes, it tells you what your genetic profile is, 45 minutes. And this is being done by nurses in 3 clinics throughout the Northwest Coast, and we're undertaking this pilot study at the moment, and we're analyzing some of the data from that right now. And as part of this, what we've done is obviously engage with patients, and Caroline Kenyon here did a press release for us, and here's a patient and 2 nurses who've been actually using this test in their clinics, and a patient here as well, Mr. Paul Downey. And he said his mother was on warfarin. It was a bit hit and miss. The dose went all over the place. But he went on this via the genetic guided dosing, and his INR has been pretty stable on the warfarin dose he's been on. Obviously, there's only 1 patient, and we're looking at the large number of patients to see how well they're improving. The important issue is that people will know, and particularly those from pharmacy background, that there are lots of new anticoagulants which are coming through. But the point of this is that we've actually determined a pathway. It was quite difficult to actually sort out an innovation pathway in the NHS to be able to implement this. And we've determined a pathway where we can actually use it for other drugs as well in the future. Second example I want to tell you is about kidney function. We did a study in Liverpool and on the Wirral, which showed that 6.5% of all admissions to our hospitals are due to adverse drug reactions. So at this very moment in time, 8,000 beds in the NHS are occupied by patients with adverse drug reactions. It's the second commonest cause of adverse drug reactions are diuretics causing renal failure, renal impairment. But there's no clear guidance at the moment for renal function monitoring in the literature. NICE suggests that you monitor once every 6 months, but that's not really individualized. If you've got a patient with type 2 diabetes on a high dose of diuretic, do they really need it 6 monthly? I would have thought they would need it much more frequently. And practice is likely to vary throughout UK. So patients don't get their kidney function tested, they end up in hospital with renal failure. And so what we're doing at the moment is that we're using a big data approach. We're getting data from all over the country, anonymized, and we're actually undertaking then artificial intelligence techniques to develop algorithms, which will actually allow us to be able to say that this patient requires the renal function monitoring done every 6 weeks, while another one requires it every 3 months, etc. Once we've done that, we've developed algorithms, we're going to make sure that it's acceptable to patients. Obviously, patients got to accept it, and the GPs particularly have got to accept it because it's going to be implemented in primary care. And what we hope from that is that we will have a personalized renal function monitoring guidance using big data, and so we can also assess whether it's effective. So the evidence base is very important here. However, how does it tie in with innovations and digital? Obviously, we're using artificial intelligence. But what we want to do is actually take it a step further. And we're working with a company in Liverpool at the moment, and we've got a grant being assessed with Innovate UK, where we can actually use sensor technologies for non-invasive monitoring of your kidney function. So you don't have to have a blood test. You just put a Fitbit on, and it will check your kidney function continuously. And we could put that into the algorithm. That's the theory anyway, in terms of innovation which may be coming through. But in order to remain connected, and we heard about connections being important, that particular Fitbit will be able to send a message to your mobile phone, also to your GP's system, and then get back to you saying you need to go to see your GP to have your dose of your diuretic reduced. And so that's the kind of loop that we're trying to create at the moment so that we can actually make sure that this works. The ideal aim here is that we want personalized renal function monitoring, which will prevent hospital admissions, make sure the patient is happier at home and cared for at home, and which will be in keeping with the 5-year forward view from NHS England. And obviously it's got to be cost effective, and we will be looking at the cost effectiveness as well. So the last case study is really looking at what's going on with our demographics. We've got an aging population which has multiple diseases, unfortunately, and multiple diseases affecting different organ systems. And because of that, you need polypharmacy, multiple drugs, to be able to treat those diseases. But irrespective of whether you've got those diseases, as you get older, your kidney function declines. 1 ml per minute after the age of 40, your glomerular filtration rate decline is. So that's quite a lot. Your liver function declines as you get older. Your liver gets smaller. So this is something for all of us to look forward to, by the way. Respiratory function declines, your cognitive function declines, and your mobility declines. So you not only have you got your diseases, but your physiological function is declining. And in that situation, how do you actually deal with the issues of preventing adverse drug reactions, reducing the sort of issues of polypharmacy, and so on? So we're also trying to do this, and there's a work going on at the moment at the Royal Liverpool Hospital. The problem that we have at the moment is, I go back to my first slide, one of the first slides, we said we do it on the basis of one dose fits all and one drug fits all. But really, we need to make it much more personalized, particularly to the elderly patient on polypharmacy. And this is a small trial which has just come out from the United States. And what they basically did in this is that they use the same premise as we do for liver and kidney function tests. At the moment, when I prescribe drugs in the Royal Liverpool Hospital, I'll have the patient's kidney function and liver function. I will then dose the patient based on the liver and kidney function, but I don't have the genetic profile at the moment. What they said was, well, actually, let's get the genetic profile. And they did a small study in patients over the 50 years old who were on multiple drugs, and they did a small trial, 57 versus 53 individuals, and in those who were tested, they get a genetic profile. And then they use the genetic profile to determine what doses the patients should have or what drugs they should receive. And despite the very small nature of the study, they were able to show that the hospitalization rate was lower in those who had the genetic profile. The other emergency department visit rates were also lower, and when they put it all together, it was still lower, and so on. Now, that is a small study. Would it work for the NHS? Well, we're doing this at the moment, and we're part of a big European consortium called UPGX. And what we're doing is basically implementing preemptive genetic testing in a real-world clinical setting in 7 countries, as shown at the bottom. And in the Royal, we are working with Alison Ewing, who's here, from pharmacy in the Royal, and we've got a pharmacist called Victoria Rawlinson who's actually doing a PhD on the basis of this. And what we're going to do is to evaluate patient outcomes, cost effectiveness using solid scientific methodology. And basically, this is the premise of the project. The first stage, which is completed, is that we had to develop all the enabling tools. We had to develop the information technology tools so that we can actually make sure that they could be incorporated into electronic health record. We had to develop all the genotyping equipment and we've done that. We've got the guidelines. What do you do when you have a particular genetic profile in terms of the dose of the drug? And we're also undertaking training education, not only of the prescribers, but also of the public as well and patients as well. And what we're going to do is to recruit 8,000 patients in 7 countries, and we're going to randomize them. We're going to really look at whether this reduces adverse drug reactions, particularly in the elderly who are on polypharmacy, and we're going to then obviously communicate this, as well as look at some of the ethical, legal, social issues associated with that. So I'll finish here. Things are always changing, and I think we need to make sure that things will change for the better. We can introduce innovations, and there are fantastic innovations going on, but it is important that we also make sure there's evidence base, that patients don't end up spending a lot of money on those innovations without any benefit, but also the NHS doesn't spend so much money on the innovations without benefits. We've got to make sure that there is evidence to implement innovations, but also to make sure that they are working properly within the NHS setting. Thank you very much for your attention.